good morning and welcome to the Lessons Learned from Easter and Looking Ahead to Summer 21 Lessons Learned webinar by ChildcareWorks HAF team. Delighted to be working with you this morning. My name is James Hempsall and it is my role today to chair today's event as well as to lead the team of 7 advisors in ChildcareWorks who are all attached to the 151 local authorities across the country. Thank you very much for joining us today for this interactive session. We're going to be hearing from 4 local authorities about their experiences in Easter and their thoughts to look ahead to summer. We also have an interactive, anonymous, confidential poll in today's session as well. And we invite you to use the Q&A function on the webinar portal to make your comments, to feedback and to ask questions. There'll also be a short evaluation online at the end and you'll get the link for that. So please do make the most of today's session to listen to the experiences of others, but also to share your experiences as well. And I'll say a little bit more about that later. Because today really is about us reflecting on what happened at Easter, how we got on, and hear those examples and those lessons learned. I will start the session with a short recap around who ChildcareWorks are and the key aspects of the support contract. I won't repeat too much of the information that we shared in our recorded online launch, but I will share the link with you for that if you've not already looked at that recorded launch. It's a very useful piece of information for you. It's about 22 minutes long and it gives you and outlines the key aspects of the ChildcareWorks programme. Of course, we've spent a lot of time preparing for moments like this. It seems ages since we've been researching and bidding to have the privilege of running this national support contract. We've spent an awful lot of time looking at the pilot experiences and the evaluation reports. We've listened and met with, we've listened to the HAF conference and we've met with the HAF Alliance. We've attended DfE bite-sized sessions, we've held focus groups and interviews of local authorities, we've talked to many of you and of course had lots of meetings with the Department for Education. But nothing is as good as engaging with the real people who are dealing with HAF right here, right now, with those live experiences gained over recent years or recent months, or for some of you, recent days. So I'm delighted that we've got today's first interactive webinar, and I'm also equally pleased to see that our advisors have started one-to-one conversations with local authorities and HAF coordinators. That's a fantastic way in which we can find out how things are going, what your common issues, challenges and questions are, and helps us to develop a support programme that works for you. But those are our aims today. We're going to reflect on Easter HAF, share with others, look at examples and plan ahead. So the plan for today is, after my brief welcome, I'm going to give you a recap of the national contract and ChildcareWorks, and I'm going to be joined by my colleague Joe Pringle, who's one of the 7 advisors for that session. And we've provided the link there to watch our launch, and that will come up also in the email that we send you after today's event. We'll also be doing the online polling, so ask those few questions. So again, anonymous and confidential responses. There's some multiple choices and there's some scoring to be done. Hopefully it will give us a good temperature taking of how things are and have been. Then we'll move to the interviews of 4 local areas to find their experience in much more detail. And at the end, we will summarise what's happened, issue the evaluation link and say what's going to happen next. Slides from today will be shared. You will get an email straight away after today's event with the evaluation link, with a link to watch the launch if you've not already done that, and the slides and the evaluation. So far, the DfE has delivered national support for you, and it's now our role to take some of that forward and provide integrated services for the local authorities to support HAF. So we do that alongside DfE. It's a position that we've occupied for 10 years in various national support rollouts. We have been fascinated to see how holiday activities and food programme has emerged, and the significant interest in it politically and publicly. And like you, we want to make sure it's a full success and reaches the children and families that it needs to reach. Of course, we are dead keen to learn the lessons and experiences so far, and that's the reason why we have today's session. Our eyes and ears and diaries for support and challenge, I might add, are open. And thank you to all of you that have returned your May delivery plan data to the department. I think everybody's done that now. In terms of how that works in partnership with the department are looking at analysing the financial and funding implications of those returns, whereas us as a team at Childcare Works, we're looking at everything else. So we've already started constructing the system that analyses how those returns tell us how things are going and what that support and challenge need is. And last week I had a look at the question that we asked, what do you want in terms of support from Childcare Works? And there are 8 strong themes from that already. And I'll just run through those very briefly. Clearly, there's a demand for support and advice on general HAF coordination, project management and funding. That came as no surprise to us, and I'm sure is no surprise to you either. There was a very strong request that monitoring and reporting was set out in advance as much as possible, so that you are clear about what information you need to collect and what information DfE will be asking for in the medium and long terms. So really common issue, and that's something that we discussed with the department last Tuesday, actually, as soon as these returns came back from you. So we're working with the department on timelines and expectations about what information will be required from you and when, to make that as in advance as possible and as easy as possible for you. There was also a theme about engaging with external and internal partners, so connecting with partners in the voluntary sector, private sector, youth and other departments. And there was also a strand in terms of forging national partnerships, and that's something that a role that DfE retains, but I have to say it's something that we're dipping our toe into as an interested party. So we're looking and asking questions about what's happening with national food suppliers and other organisations. And then there are other themes around marketing, reach and engagement with children and families. Again, no surprise there, because we do need to get the message across to children and families that need it. And some of those practical things around systems and bookings and provider support and engagement, which we know from the pilot experiences takes an enormous amount of time once you're going through the commissioning process and the contracting, the compliance and the delivery support. There's a lot of work there. There was also some requests around meeting food standards, and I've noticed also that there's a theme of that coming through the help desk calls and emails that are coming to our help desk. And then finally, there was that request for facilitated peer support and information sharing. And you will see and hear that actually that's all well in line with our strategy and our plans to support everybody with information sharing and connecting you with other peers who can help. But let me say, we do more than information sharing. In a role like this, it's the easiest thing for us just to be pressing buttons and sending you everything. Actually, we pride ourselves at Childcare Works by taking the time to analyse information, summarising it and making sense of it and pointing out perhaps the things that have changed or the important things that we think you need to know about, rather than just swamping you with absolutely everything. So if you attended our launch or watched it, you will have noticed that Childcare Works is the term that we give when 2 organisations work together. Mott MacDonald and Hempsall's worked together for 10 years, and collectively we are known as Childcare Works. We're a blend of Hempsall's being a small, medium-sized enterprise, children's services specialists, and a global professional project management service company, Mott MacDonald. And recently, whilst we both have a scope in children's services of 0 to 18, our collaborative projects have been focused on preschool children in the recent past. on behalf of DFE. So we supported the national rollout of funded places for disadvantaged 2-year-olds, and we supported the national rollout of 30 hours childcare for 3 and 4-year-olds. But as I said, our focus is on 0 to 18. And actually both of those projects are really relevant for us in this HAF space, because all of those processes are the same. So our work with local authorities to check and support planning, levels of preparedness and delivery risk are all evident in our plan with you. But so are the processes of the things that we're all grappling with. So we're very familiar with mapping existing supply and assessing the sufficiency of provision, identifying risks and gaps in that, and supporting the development of plans to address those risks. Lots on reaching engagement. You can imagine the 2-year-old programme was targeted at initially the 40% least advantaged children, so children in families in receipt of benefits or in low incomes. Reaching engagement was a very strong requirement in that project, and that's something that we drove and supported quite significantly. Lots of focus on quality and provision and meeting standards, not only legally, but quality standards as well. And we're very familiar in the space of Ofsted registration and inspection and safeguarding and child protection. So it also strands there in that work around disadvantage and supporting children with special educational needs and disabilities. But our approach, and Jo will say a little bit more about this in a moment, is to work alongside you to help review and measure planning and delivery progress, to help share and move good quality information around, connect you together so you can work collaboratively in clusters or match you up in pairs, so that we can tackle those shared solutions. We really want this to feel like one whole national project rather than 151 different ones. We also want to celebrate when things are going well as well, and to offer direct support when needed. In short, we want to reduce the burden, make things easier and more successful, and take advantages of us all working together. We know that everybody's busy and we know there's an awful lot going on, and we want to be able to add value to that. So Jo, why don't you tell everybody about the team?
Super. Thank you, James. As James has already outlined, the advisor team are the linchpin of our contacts with you. And if we can have the next slide, we can see our cohort. There are 7 of us, and each local authority has a nominated advisor. You should know who your advisor is. You should have received an invitation from your advisor to the clusters, if not yesterday, maybe this morning. If you haven't had that invitation, then please do contact the help desk so that we can make sure that comes through to you. So to start off with, me and the rest of the advisor team will be working with small geographical clusters. But as the programme developed, we may want to make some adjustment to those clusters, either to reflect some common challenges faced by local authorities or to refine advisor caseloads. So we do reserve the right to, in a small number of cases, to maybe relocate your advisor if we think that we can provide a better targeted service. In addition to our 7 advisors, we have a coordination team and the help desk. Now, in all the work that we've done together with Childcare Works and Mott MacDonald, we very often will talk about the 7 people on the screen here and James are our front-facing crew, and what sits behind us is the coordination team and the help desk and the project management that do the back office and keep the engine running. But as well as a 7, the coordination team and the help desk, there's also a team of additional experts that we'll draw on for inputs as and when that we need it. So we're starting this process with really in the position of trying to find out and listening to you. The next slide shows where we are thinking with regards to identifying local authority support needs. When we're identifying needs, it involves a variety of different things, but most importantly, it starts off with getting to know you. So what we've been doing as a team is undertaking desk research, visiting websites, looking at your social media posts, getting a feel for what really happened behind the scenes for you at Easter. As James said, we've been hearing contributions that you've made to Bite Sizes and to other conferences, and we've been looking at the May delivery report. We've been picking the baton up using James's picture from earlier on from our DFE colleagues, where there have been ongoing dialogues with local authorities, and we've been setting up initial meetings with HAF coordinators and local authority teams. And in due course, the third part of that will be our What Works tool. All its activities have been about identifying support needs, helping us to think both about universal and targeted support. Universal being the things that will benefit everyone, and targeted for a specific group, a specific theme that cuts across a number of areas, or for an individual local authority that might need a little bit more. DFE have asked us, as part of this support contract, that we develop improvement plans with you to address areas of concern or difficulty where it's needed. So we're looking at what the needs are, putting some plans in place to meet universal and targeted, and then thinking about what our support options might be. Our support options is a structure of 6 different things, really. Information shared through the Knowledge Hub, the help desk, and every time that we come together, because sometimes that's all that's needed, a document, an example, something else that somebody else has done. We've got an advisor input and one-to-ones that provide support, and as James has said, that challenge as well, that external perspective, but also a helping hand. We've got our peer support, which our peer support framework is around getting it right from the start. Forums, information exchange, events and training, and a spotlight on best practice so that we can learn from what works, we can take the best of things that happen, and we can move things forward quickly. Our clusters are an opportunity to come together, to talk with your peers, to talk with local colleagues, or to talk with colleagues within a theme, to find solution and to also find out what's working and to overcome challenges. Training and webinars will be driven by the information that we are taking from discussions and from the delivery report, and will focus on common themes, the things that might be easy to fix, but also some of those things that are more challenging. And when things are more challenging or when we need them, we have our team of expert input that we can draw on as and when that is needed. I mentioned earlier the help desk, and James has referenced the help desk as well. The help desk and helpline went live on the 10th of May, and I know that many of you have already accessed that. We started to organise one-to-one meetings with named advisors on the 12th of May. Most of those appointments have already been made. Many have actually taken place last week and are taking place this week with the first tranche of local authorities. If you've had an invitation and you haven't got back to us, please can we ask that you do, so that we can get that meeting scheduled as soon as possible. There will be further tranches that will roll out shortly. And in addition, as I've referenced a couple of times, please look out for your invitation to your first cluster meeting that arrive from your advisor that will take place just after half term. Analysis of the reports and of the conversations that we're having is supporting us to prioritise bite-sized sessions, webinars and other support activities, and these will transition from the department to us in Childcare Works from June onwards. A critical milestone for our summer delivery will be the round of cluster meetings at the end of June, beginning of early July, which will allow everyone to check in on readiness for the summer holidays and progress to the start date. The slide doesn't go beyond summer activity, but programme support obviously continues beyond that as we head towards Christmas. And a big part of that support will be building on further lessons learned, what's worked during the summer, and what we have learned during the summer. So back to you, James.
Thanks, Joe. And what I'll just do is reiterate, at the end of these slides, you will see that the help desk email and phone number is on there in case that's escaped your notice so far. Do get in touch with the help desk for anything. If you've not managed to see, I think it was yesterday that the cluster emails went out, which should inform you who your advisor is. That email came from your advisor via the help desk. Contact them. If you need to know who your advisor is, want to get in touch with your advisor, want to request a one-to-one meeting with your advisor, then you can do that. But also, we are working with the DFE mailing list. We've inherited a mailing list from the department. I think it's good housekeeping if you were to get in touch with the help desk and say who in our local authority is on that mailing list, so that you can review it and add and take away from that mailing list. Because if you are getting emails directly from us, then that's going to improve the level of communication, rather than you get somebody getting it and having to forward it, or you getting it 2 or 3 times. So do use the help desk to connect with your advisor, and make sure that the mailing list works for you. Okay, right. The next part of today's session is we are going to be looking at those polling questions. And there's a few things I need to say first before we get all excited and start pressing buttons. But there's going to be a series of questions come up on screen for you. Some of them are multiple choice. Some of them I think you can select one answer, some of them multiple answers, and some of them are asking you to do a score out of 10, which, you know, some of those, so some of you will prefer the multiple choice, some of you will prefer the numerical ones. But it's let me say, it's the comments and your replies aren't attributed to you. So this is a confidential, anonymous temperature taking of how you're responding to these questions about Easter and beyond. I'll also invite you to use the Q&A function to make comments that will be attributed to you, or observations actually about what people have been saying in terms of their responses. And I will open up to the panel of speakers that we have on today's session to make some comments about what those findings are saying to you when I publish the results in a moment. So let's, with a fair wind, launch these polling questions. There are a few for you to go through, so take a few moments to fill them in. There are actually 7 questions. Some of them are, as I said, scoring, and some of them are multiple choice. So I'm going to launch the polling now. It'll take a few minutes to do that. When I can see that there's enough results, I will publish them, and then we can all think about what that means for us. So off we go. So I'll invite panelists to make their comments and observations, of course. Let's have a quick start. So overall, how did Easter half go in your area? Well, fantastic to see that the top result there was better than expected. That's good news. But it is, of course, to be expected that there'll be a few things that could have been better and some problems that need sorting out. Do talk to us if you're in that category and there's anything that we can do to help. Fantastic to see that 13 of you did much better than you expected. In terms of the highlight of Easter half, and I think this might be the question where only one answer was allowed. I do apologise if that's been the case. But we have a pretty even spread there, but the big one, the most common answer at 25% was provider capability, followed by leadership and management. So that's encouraging, given what we're all planning and journeying towards for summer. Reach engagement of children, a good one too. So I would encourage any of you to put some flavour to that on the Q&A function and see what your comments are and why did you make those scores and what have you got to say about that. Slightly lower on engagement of families there, so that might be one to watch, and I'd be interested to see more about provided capacity as well myself. How did you deliver Easter half? Well, 71% of you delivered an online and face-to-face blended offer, with 17% of you face-to-face only, and 13% of you online only. I'll just remind you, please use the Q&A function if you want to make any comment. Unfortunately, we can't let you in if you put your hand up, because this is a Zoom webinar rather than a Zoom meeting. So if you want to make any comment or question, do make that on the Q&A function. Currently, we would self-score our implementation planning as 10 being excellent and 0 being significant problems. So there are a few responses there under 5. So that's something that we would want to talk to you about. But a majority score being 7, that's an encouraging result, and well done to those of you that scored 8, 9s and 10s on that. That's also good to see. Self-score and provided capability. Again, you've got pretty similar results there in terms of a spread of numbers, with 7 being the most common answer. Self-scoring provided capacity. Again, a pretty similar spread and graph there. So that's encouraging to see that we are bottoming out at around 7s on those scores. Reach and engagement, slightly lower. With the most common answer being 6, but at the curve there being the same, but slightly lower scores, but actually encouraging to see that there was no 1s or 2s scored on that one. So what does everybody else think about those results? Anybody on the panel? Joe?
I think it's great to see that self-score for majority of things being really high. I would love for those who are scoring in the 8, 9s and 10s to, if they're willing to contribute and to share, to make contact on that positive note. And those who have self-identified themselves with their planning and whatever lower, again, you know, to contact the advisors to have a quicker conversation. We're being led by the data and the information that we have, and information like that is absolutely crucial to help us to be able to get in where people self-identify that support is also needed as well. But a great mix of answers there, and some real positive feelings around what happened over Easter. That's super.
Okay. There's been one comment on the Q&A around the answers not really covering if activity packs were given. So if activity packs are given to schools for circulation and distribution, that's not face-to-face and it's not online. So it was another answer. So we'll absolutely take that point. Any other comments or questions?
It's good to see that provider capability is you know, in majority of the answers for provider capability are in the higher half of the scoring than the lower half of the scoring, and that's super. And I think that you know, having had conversations with local authorities this week, you know, there are many providers from all sorts of backgrounds who have the experience that are being drawn on, and that's superb.
And of course, we must acknowledge the impact of COVID on Easter delivery. We don't need to talk about the detail of that. People understand that. So that will have impacted on some of those reach and engagement factors, which will be different for summer, although it is a movable feast and nothing is certain when it comes to COVID and local arrangements.
And I think the other thing that influences that reach and engagement will have been the short lead-in time, whereas there is a significantly longer lead-in time between now and the summer. And, you know, I am sure that there will, you know, that will look very different than the short lead-in time that many local authorities and coordinators had for the Easter project.
I really like Jane Parker's comment here. We found it harder than expected to reach the right children and families. We have learned from this and have now been making more links and talking to the schools to get them on board to push out the opportunities to their free school meal families for the summer. I mean, it sounds obvious, but it's so important that we link with schools who know who free school meals children are and are able to share that information with you and get information to those families and support them to think that holiday activities and food program is for them from a trusted provider and something that they will enjoy and benefit from. So greater links with schools, to use them to reach and engage, the better. And I hear that quite a bit. And it's that in terms of that penny dropping in many areas, that's actually what needs to be done. So there does need to be some partnership work in there and some spade work to make sure that the schools are involved. Okay. No more new comments or questions. Anybody else on the panel before I move on to the local authority discussion? Trevor Swaby says, I gave a high number to providers as they deliver with a short turnaround time we gave them. And yes, didn't they? Our main issues were clarifying eligible children and children not attending after booking spaces. Yes, so of course, providers have done an awful lot to get ready in a short time scale. There never seems to be enough time, even now looking towards the summer, to get ready. And I think children not attending will be a common feature in my experience. If you're offering a free service, then that will diminish some families' motivation. Things change, and many families have changing conditions and competing agendas and routines. So attendance levels will be a tricky one from my experience. Okay, that Q&A needs to continue. Please continue to make your comments, and we'll publish the Q&A and comments and come back to anything that we're unable to answer today. And any questions for the department, we will pass on and make sure that they're responded to through our help desk as well. What I would like, so with that invitation to carry on the Q&A, I would now like to open up the local authority discussions. And Joe, you have 4 local authorities who are going to share in more detail their experience.
We have indeed. So welcome we've got Sharon from Bradford, we've got Andrea and Kirsty from Wandsworth, Gareth from Suffolk, and Nikki from Herefordshire, which hopefully will give us a rounded picture of unitary, London and universal rural provision as well. So let's start, I think, by finding out a little bit more about each of the local authorities who are contributing today. So if I can go to Andrea from Wandsworth first, could you give everyone on the webinar a little overview, a quick overview of your HAF delivery background and model?
Hi, good morning everyone. So Wandsworth, we called our programme Easter Unlocked. It's the total opposite from lockdown. So we ran our programme for 2 weeks over the Easter. Some of our providers were actually doing activities during the bank holiday and weekends as well. So now our HAF programme is led by Children's Services within Wandsworth Council, and we're still lucky to have internal youth clubs. So our clubs put on activities and our external providers put on activities, and there was even some partnering between some of our external activities, our external providers like Chelsea Football and our internal providers. So we were able to do joint activities as well. So it worked out really, really well. So from our mapping, we knew we had a lack of provision for 4 to 7-year-olds, and we had 2 cold spots in our area in Wandsworth. So we actively sought providers that could cater for that age range and put additional provisions in those 2 cold spots. And one element we were aware of was children with additional needs. So previously we ran a holiday activity last year, and we were really overwhelmed by the amount of children who were referred to us with additional needs. So this year, what we've done, we were lucky to have a SEND coordinator who produced a template that parents could fill out with their child's needs, which was shared with our providers. So the parent and child felt supported, and the providers were fully aware of the child's needs. So our SEND coordinators were also able to support parents and providers if they had any concerns. So for those 2 weeks and previous, it's literally, we had a helpline. So we was always on call via telephone or email to deal with any concerns that our providers had. So we also had 2 club activities that were for children only with additional needs, to support those with additional needs. So within children's services, again, we always have children and young people's input in everything we do. So we also have a group of young ambassadors that are recruited from schools and clubs across the borough. They get involved in volunteering, decision making, promotion, marketing, evaluation, and they were able to volunteer and support our providers during the Easter also. And I know this has been mentioned before, we really relied heavily on our schools to contact those parents and families on free school meals, and to signpost them to us and to our providers to access those activities. And it's something that we have to continue to do. The schools have asked us to actually come in and talk to them and talk to their senior leadership teams about the HAF provision, so they're in a better place to talk to parents about the HAF provision and how better to support them. So Easter was hard, but we managed to work together and deliver a good package.
I'll come back shortly and find out a bit around the highlights and what went well. But before we do that, can I come over to you, Nikki? In Herefordshire, similar, different? What's your model, HAF delivery model and background?
Okay, so just to let you know, I've only joined the team a month ago. So the HAF was coordinated over Easter by some of my colleagues, a project manager and the education officer who specialises in 14 to 17-year-olds. So I am going on their feedback of the project at that point.
No problem at all.
So during the Easter holidays, they made contact with schools and they decided the best way to go forward and meet as many needs of the children as they can was by providing an activity pack. So we had an activity pack designed for primary school children, secondary school children, and then our children with special educational needs and disability. So for the primary school packs, the schools sent out some communication to families about how many wanted to sign up. So the take up for primary school children was fairly good. It wasn't such a great take up for our young people in secondary school, but we did distribute some. However, to reduce stigma and going home with an activity box, these were sent directly to the families that had signed up. And then our children on free school meals with special educational needs were distributed by the schools as well. So we were able to offer some virtual online education, piggybacking on the back of our healthy lifestyle teams who were doing things like Bake Away Friday and that sort of thing that were already in place, so they could sign up to view those. And then the second week of the Easter holiday, some of the schools were able to do face-to-face delivery. So we had about 102 children that received face-to-face out of 3,200. So we were fairly pleased we got some face-to-face in. Going forward, we've had more time to do some mapping, contact our activity providers as well as the school, as well as our community groups. And we're in that engagement process at the moment, and we're really having a positive response. So we're hoping our offer will be able to be give a better range of and geographical locations as well.
Hold that thought, because we'll come back to think about what are the things that you over Easter, or some of the issues and some of the things we might need to do differently. So I'll come back and visit that one. Now I'm coming nearer home now, just down the road, Sharon in Bradford. What about you? Tell us about your delivery background and model.
Okay, so my name is Sharon Sanders. I'm at Bradford Council and I'm the programme manager for the HAF programme, and I sit within the Education and Learning Service. So our background has been that we've utilised an organisation that delivers these sorts of programmes across Bradford for a number of years. And last year, because of COVID, we were very heavily involved in working with that organisation to try and expand offer in terms of engagement with schools and improvements around that. And they were very, very successful with that. We're excited that now we actually have that opportunity to lead and drive this from a council perspective. And our model is very much around working very closely with the voluntary sector and community groups. So for Easter, we increased our number of voluntary sector organisations from in the 40s to around about 97 to 100, which is fantastic. And obviously what we wanted to do is to build the capability and capacity around that and extend the way that we work with them. But they've been absolutely critical throughout the whole of our historic delivery, and we certainly see them as playing a key part in any future delivery plans that we have.
Super, thank you. And coming across, or coming down to you, should I say, Gareth, it's a bit like Eurovision, this is. What's been happening in Suffolk? What, different, similar?
No, well, we're slightly in a slightly, I say, luxurious position that we've piloted the programme for 2 years prior to Easter. So we used two very different models before that. One, our first year, we were placing children in their closest provision to where they lived, and so it was most accessible. The second year, we planned a local coordination model. So we will be working really on the ground with assets, our districts and borough colleagues, to plan local offers. As we all know, last summer didn't go to plan with COVID, so we had to revert to a far more remote offer and targeted activities. Bringing that, so we wanted to carry that locality model through to this year's programme. Unfortunately, with the restrictions at Easter, we were not able to engage our district and borough colleagues in the way that we had hoped, because they were focusing very much on the COVID sort of recovery and things, and the fact that we sort of still had restrictions in place meant that there were a lot of providers who weren't able to deliver or willing to deliver activity in the way that that was required of them over Easter. But we did get we got a blend of actual face-to-face provision across the county, as well as then a large food meal kit offer that included wellbeing packs and activity packs that went out to homes. So hopefully for summer, our fourth attempt at delivering the programme as we now would like to is that coordination at a local level with our district and borough colleagues, devising those programmes with their local community groups, partners, commercial providers at that local level, so we get that good spread with areas that aren't that won't be left out. So we're hoping that that's progressing. It's not all in place because people are still recovering and the work and roles that they were doing for the COVID recovery. So we are stretched, but we're getting there, I think, and those offers are beginning to build.
Super. So fingers crossed, fourth time lucky.
Yeah.
But absolutely have got a contingency plan in place, because you've had a contingency plan in place, and put that into practice as we've moved forward. Thank you very much. So back up north again. Sharon, how did Easter go, and what were the highlights, or what was the highlight or the highlights for you in Bradford?
Yeah, Easter was good, actually. It was a lot better than we thought. Obviously with the COVID restrictions, we thought that a lot more would be done online, but we were delighted, and the highlight for us was the fact that we were able to deliver lots of face-to-face sessions. And that was such a broad range of things. So dancing, arts, cooking, so cook and eat, that sort of thing. It was really, really exciting. The feedback that we've had from the children and the parents that participated in that was really positive. It sparked some interest in one young person, a career in PE, because they got so involved in the physical activities. Also interest in cooking as well. So, you know, cookery competitions and things like that were there. It was very, very positive. I think that the element of challenge was around those children who weren't able to participate, and as we all know, there's a variety of reasons for that. But they were provided with activity packs at home, and some of the things that we provided meant that they were able to do sports activities. So it was like, you know, little badminton sets and tennis sets and all those sorts of things, as well as activities from nature. So we got information from the RSPB in terms of children bird spotting. We issued bird boxes. We had a bird box competition. We did lots of things. Seeds, so see how seeds grow. So again, trying to build some of that awareness of nature, nutrition, physical activity as well was good. So yeah, there were lots of good things about that, and some things that we will obviously take forward and want to expand on for the summer.
Super, and we'll hear more about that shortly. Thank you very much. So Andrea, back down to Wandsworth then. Highlights for you. Now you've had time to reflect. What are the highlights from all that hard work?
Okay, so Wandsworth, I mean, we always planned to do face-to-face even before Boris made the announcement, but we did ask our providers to do a programme, a face-to-face, and fallback position was our virtual programme, because we all know about the COVID curve.
Oh, we seem to have lost Andrea. Kirsty, are you able to jump in?
Yeah, I
can yeah, my computer technical problems, sorry.
No problem.
Technical problems. So so we did have a few online options to support parents and young children who were still very apprehensive about attending something other than school. So just a few online activities. So we supported them having an engaging summer, because we didn't want to have, you know, some accessing and some not if we did all face to face. So due to COVID, we couldn't offer as many places as we would have liked. So maximum 15 young people at a time. And so to maximise on the numbers, some of our clubs split up the time frame. So for example, in the morning we saw 8 to 11s, in the afternoons we saw 12 plus, and in the afternoon we had evening sessions for 16 plus. So that was trying to get the maximum amount of numbers we could due to COVID or COVID numbers. So one of the plus that we've noticed, and some of our providers have said that, and it's mirrored, hopefully it's mirrored across everybody, is that there's been increased membership and increased numbers of children looking to attend provisions in some of our youth clubs, and that's what we want to see. You know, we have a better understanding of what's in the area, and with our young people and our families attending the clubs, they can see what's in the area and they can go, oh, you know, Joe would love to attend that. So there's been an increased membership on our youth provision. So Easter hadn't finished yet, and parents were already emailing us about what's going on for summer. So they're keen, they are really keen. But another one of the highlights is our partnership with our providers. So during the COVID year, we spent a huge amount of time having a different relationship, more of a trusted relationship, building stronger relationships with them. So less of that kind of parent-child relationship. Wandsworth haven't got a CVS, so we rely heavily on our other voluntary groups. So we attend those meetings, we engage, we support. So we worked really, really hard in strengthening our relationships with our Vol sector. And I think the highlight is that we were able to deliver Easter Unlocked with huge amount of providers, new providers as well. So that worked really, really well. And also there was so many, you have to be on call 24 hours, literally. We have providers saying, where can I get a lat flow test? So you have to be able to respond really quickly with them. But I would actually say to everybody out there, if you have a chance to go and attend some of these activities as part of your quality assurance, definitely. When we spoke to the parents and the children and providers, we got a good sense of what was going on, and it kind of energizes you, because doing the HAFT, being honest, it's a hard graft, it's a lot of work, there's a lot of things that you have to cover. But when you go and see the young people engaging, doing you know, enjoying themselves, you get a chance to play, and it kind of hits home while you're doing it.
Absolutely. It's always good to be taken back to ground level. Absolutely.
So can I read, I just want to read some of the, because we've done our own kind of surveys and questionnaires. I'm just going to read some of them for you now. So I'm a single mum who was shielded due to my son's illness. My daughter joined the HAF Easter programme. She suffers from anxiety, so I wasn't sure she would be engaging. However, she looked forward to her sessions. Her fitness was good, but she especially enjoyed the food side of it. She tried different recipes and different products she'd never tried before. So this is one from our provider. To be honest, we did underestimate it all. We had 3 adults of 15 children, and at times it was challenging, but overall, everyone had a great time. And I had parents pleading for spaces for the rest of their week as the child was having so much fun. So Easter was good. We could have done better, and I know you're going to cover that, and we're going to correct stuff for summer, but Easter was our test run. It was like us putting our toe into the big pool, and we're ready to dive into summer now. So
Super.
Easter was...
Sounds as though it went well, and notes and comments like that are absolutely brilliant. So Gareth, coming down to you then. Highlights, did it? I know it went well because I can tell from how positively you talk about things, but what are the highlights?
Yeah, I think a highlight well, there were a couple of things. I think the fact we got the amount of face-to-face provision on in areas that had the highest free school meal need was a real plus, and that was through working with our providers who were connected with schools, obviously able to deliver and things. So we made real good use of those who were able to support the programme, and the amount of children we got through that was really good, and the spread across the county. Another one I think was our capabilities. Our counsellors and senior managers wanted to have before the obviously the announcement of the winter grant fund being extended and use of vouchers, we were able to devise the food meal kit delivery and have that as an offer to every free school meal child in the county. So I think we hit about 13,000 children through that means. It wasn't easy. There were plenty of lumps and bumps in the road, but I think the scale that we reached through that without the voucher scheme initially being available was really significant. And although it was a highlight of Easter, that's not something that we're carrying forward to summer, obviously. But I think those were the two: was the face-to-face delivery in areas that needed, and that ability to pull that operation in at scale for that size offer.
Super, thank you. And over across to you, Nikki. So I know that obviously you weren't necessarily part of the delivery team at the time, but what's the feedback from the team who were, and what they got to say about the high points of Easter delivery?
Definitely that they were able to coordinate some face-to-face delivery, because it was a real tight turnaround and people doing multiple jobs on top of the HAF. So they were really pleased that there was some face-to-face offer. The feedback from the providers doing the face-to-face was really lovely. Lots of different activities, some den building, some outdoor activities, a real mixed bag, which I think in its early stages is promising for us going forward in summer. And the activity packs were well received. We had to choose kind of flat activities because we wanted them to be postable, so they went out in sort of pizza boxes, but there was stress balls and frisbees, skipping ropes for the younger children, again some sunflower seeds and stuff around nature and things like that. And just to have feedback that they were well received, and you know, a time when everybody had been locked in, it was good to have some activities to do in the home. So yeah, that was the highlight from us, really.
Lovely, thank you. So we spent a little bit of time reflecting, thinking about what was delivered and what the highlights were. I suppose now we need to look ahead and think about what next. So now we've had time to reflect, Kirsty, if we come back to you in Wandsworth, what areas or issues do you think need work before the summer, before we get to the next programme delivery?
Okay, we've given a lot of thought to this. Easter was a huge learning experience for us, and we can't, like Andrea stressed, underestimate how important it is to try and get out, speak to the young people, to talk to the providers whilst they're delivering, and to have the opportunity to hear firsthand some of those social impact stories about the difference it's making. So we kind of summarised our priorities we need to address into 3 areas, which was around engagement, our systems and processes, and our resources, which sounds like the whole programme, but it really isn't. So in terms of engagement, we thought we'd planned early enough to engage with our providers, but we needed more time. We needed more time to be able to get into schools, understand the pressures that they're working in, the information overload, the COVID implications, to be able to share the programme and to utilise their connections that they already have, their lists and their ways of engaging with young people on free school meals and parents that we didn't have. We needed to recognise that the HAF programme is an additional delivery to a lot of what our providers are already doing, and that some people would need a bit more time, a bit more support, and we needed to adapt our communication with them to be able to support them to become part of the programme. We're aware that we have a tendency to send out a lot of information, and for some of our providers that's overwhelming. And we needed to be able to give them some time to have some Q&A, some reflection. We're definitely much more prepared for summer. We've got a new HAF coordinator who we think is on the call, who was able to focus primarily on working on our offer for next year, moving forward from summer onwards. We are looking at also how we liaise with our social workers, our early help services to engage the young people's journey from being referred or being identified as a young person on free school, also actually attending. So I've seen in the chat a lot of questions around trying to bridge the gap between people booking and people actually then attending and subsequently going on to maintain engagement with that provider, because that was really important to us to try and build up a connection. So as Andrea said, that those young people continue to attend post HAF programme. And we know that there's more work to be done with facilitating that relationship so that it doesn't stop with a referral or a young person being contacted by their worker, that they actually bring them along and we facilitate ways for them to do that. We want to improve our systems and processes. So our mapping was really thorough, but there are other areas we can map against, gaps in age group provision, gaps against benefit information from the DWP. We've seen some really great examples in some of the webinars here. Our advertising, one of this is a really diverse inner city London borough. We have lots of EAL families, we have lots of families with SEND, we have lots of families with mental health challenges, and we need to be more flexible on how we promote and advertise the programme. We changed our booking system this time around for the first time, so that young people and their families book directly with providers, recognising that our providers know their service best, so they're best placed to meet the needs of those young people. However, for us, that meant our knowledge of who was attending, the take-up for particular areas or providers, how to signpost families with their vacancies were a bit more detached from that this time round, which was a bit of a challenge for us. Recording our attendance, that was challenging. We're looking to develop a booking system, an electronic booking system, to make that a lot easier, and to vary the way that we are evaluating to identify the next step forward. So hearing about from our young ambassadors, having focus groups. We did have an electronic evaluation, and obviously we have feedback focus groups from providers and evaluations, but vary that a little bit more so we're hearing from everybody. And then last but not least, our resources. So key at the top of that was the need for us to develop a project team looking at business support, finance, a project manager, our SEND coordinators, a link from our early help and social care teams. We were originally running on a very small team, and as we're moving from Easter to summer, we're looking to multiply our providers, our provision, our spaces by 3 or 4 times. So we're going to need a bigger team. Our time, to give ourselves more flexibility around deadlines. If we gave a week, either way, what we know from our providers, the pressures they're under, the work they're doing, we need to give 2 or 3 weeks. And definitely a comprehensive training and support plan, looking at the areas that our providers have fed back to us that they would like some more support in, which are around SEND, safeguarding, mental health and food hygiene, and some support with developing their policies and procedures to make sure they're in line with the standards for HAF. So we're looking to do that with our SEND coordinator, our training department, and some of our external training providers. So we learned a huge amount from Easter that we are bringing forward into summer that is rapidly approaching, but we think we're on schedule for that, and we're hopefully going to revisit that again at the end of summer to make further improvements for Windsor Unlocked moving.
Super, that is a pretty comprehensive list that you have there. So, absolutely. So over to you, Sharon. Bradford.
Wow.
What will you, I know, is your list as big?
Oh, yeah, probably. I think one of the things that we've highlighted, as Kirsty just said, is around resources. So, you know, it's been me and a couple of people doing grants processing. So lots of networking that I've been doing, and clearly that wasn't sustainable. So we've recruited a project manager, which I'm delighted to have. And in addition to that, we have allocated some resources from across the council to work within the district. So what I'm going to have is I'm going to have a constituency HAF coordinator, and there'll be 5 of those because we have 5 constituencies, and those HAF coordinators will feed into my project manager, which is great. And then having a HAF officer within each ward, because one of the things that we're trying to do, and that's what, 30 wards. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to really expand on that collaboration. So one of the things that I'm doing at the moment in terms of the grant applications is running webinars where I'm really encouraging our providers to work together and perhaps collaborate and do joint bids, and actually putting schools very much at the heart of that, as colleagues have said earlier, in relation to ensuring that you are targeting the right families and all that sort of stuff. So for me, the people on the ground will be critical. We have got our grants application process at the moment that closes on the 4th of June. And so, you know, once we can see what the offer is that people are proposing, that will help us overlaying that against our map to see where there are any gaps in provision. Also to see whether there are perhaps providers who can do one thing, but they're not able to do something else, and how can we match them? And equally, I think there's some work to be done within those communities whereby we need to use the HAF officers to work with schools and facilitate sessions for the children, for the families, to encourage them to attend across the summer. As Andrea said earlier, the other thing we're doing is obviously working very closely with schools, specifically those who are opening their premises for the catch-up for the year 7s into secondary, to see how we can maximise on that. I've also encouraged grant applications from schools in relation to, you may not want to, you know, you may not have staff that can actually be physically in your building to deliver. However, you may well be willing for us to utilise your facilities in order for us to deliver that through community groups. So asking them to put bids in for that around caretaker, cleaning, all that sort of stuff, so we can actually maximise on the utilisation of what they have to offer. So I think, you know, in Bradford, we're very fortunate that we have a lot of organisations that do work together, and that as a district we are very connected and work very well with universities and other organisations. And another thing that we're doing is offering a sort of digital makers sort of STEM conference where children can get involved and actually attend STEM sessions and feel that they are you know, that they're doing educational catch-up, but it doesn't feel like educational catch-up, it's fun. And also it's likely to lead to some aspiration, because we're very keen to ensure that our children and young people have that aspiration. So there's that. We're also working closely with SEND partners to understand what the needs are around SEND and additional needs. I think that the big thing, as I say, is that we need to work on that connectivity and making sure that things are joined up. I am a little bit apprehensive is not the right word, but a little bit concerned in terms of actually, as we start to expand the number of providers, what's the best way for us to do the booking process, and do we need to look at a centrally coordinated booking process? And you know, we've had some discussions with providers, but I'd be very keen to learn more about that from yourselves, really. So yeah, lots of good things that we're doing, lots that we can do better, and clearly building that sustainability, encouraging people to volunteer, be able to train those volunteers up, because ultimately they could be providers of the future. So how do we ensure that we're building that sustainability is really important to us as well. Super. So lots going on.
Absolutely. Sounds like it's a top up, bottom down, meet in the middle, reach out
absolutely.
sort of approach. Fabulous. Thank you, Sharon. So Gareth, what do you need to work on? What's your next steps before the summer?
I think our biggest challenge is actually we're fine kind of with our commercial providers saying we can deliver, we can offer you free places and things. What we are struggling with is coming out of COVID in a rural county is the number of community providers who were there 2 summers ago, either coming back very, very slowly and hesitantly or not coming back at all. So that's going to then obviously have an impact on particularly some of our rural areas and the variety of offer in those in particularly rural locations. So those are our biggest along with transport, the dreaded T word in our steering group. But so that's really kind of the big areas that we're focusing on. But one challenge we have found is also the cost of provision balance across various activities on offer. So some are incredibly expensive to fit in with the program, and others are kind of what you would expect as average. So yeah, there's a number of things that we're balancing and juggling with. But I think going forward, I think there's the will and the desire, and I think people will be able to respond. But it's the rural community ones that we really are concerned at, that's where the black spots will be in provision or lack of variety. So yeah, that's probably our biggest challenge, is that those communities provisions coming back into play, because they might be more ad hoc, whereas I think some of the speakers sort of they're quite rooted in delivering more than just out of goodwill, which is what some of our providers sort of do, bits here, bits there, and a bit more on a whim than kind of real structured stuff.
Okay.
So yeah,
thank you, Gareth. And definitely not least, but you are last in this section. So what have the team that were doing it before left you with the actions for moving forward there, Nikki?
Okay, so communication was a big learning curve because of the amount of we were heavily reliant on our schools, who were having lots of email communication with parents around COVID restrictions and everything like that, which meant that possibly communication wasn't being prioritized at that time. So the plea is perhaps there could be some central communication, so as providers, schools and families know about this program. We felt we were kind of introducing them to a program at a time when there was lots going on anyway, other than the HAF, but the COVID guidance and so on. So communication, we've learnt that the request was that perhaps there could be a leaflet or something that could go out directly to families. So we're considering a way of engaging our families directly. As Gareth mentioned, transport's going to be a big issue for our rural locations. School bus services definitely come to a stop, and the bus services in the holidays is very limited across some of the villages. So we need to explore community transport, volunteers. We have got a strong community group. We're working with food banks and around food surplus and fair share organisations. So I think there's a real positive mood for providers and our community groups to come on board in some capacity, whether that's community space they can offer, volunteers or food surplus. So yes, that was the key from the other team, really. Communication. We're looking at doing a sort of launch event. The local the Hereford City Rugby Club have said we can use their facilities and have some of our providers come and do some taster sessions prior to the summer holidays, to give children and young people opportunity to see what activities are available and hopefully encourage them to book on. So yes, that's where we're at.
Super. So I'm acutely aware of time. Don't disappear, Nikki. You're next on my list for my last round of questions.
Okay.
We've got very short amount of time now. So what would be the one thing that you'd like to see out of the support contract?
Well, I think James sort of covered it all in the beginning, really. But definitely, when I first came into post, I was frantically phoning my colleagues and making contact with my colleagues in other locations to get some support and shared solutions around how they were delivering the HAF. So I think if there's one-to-one support with our advisor would be great, but also that opportunity to just sort of network with other authorities about the rollout and you know, around monitoring and evaluation. I just think there's lots to be shared experience when you're kind of doing a lone post and also working at home and things like that, to bounce ideas and network would be really helpful.
Absolutely. And you've got the invite, you know, we're starting those from straight after half term. Very quickly, in one sentence, Gareth, I'm down to that now. What would be one thing for you?
I think it would have to be around sharing examples of just not good practice, because we don't necessarily know how it works, but sharing ideas from those regional conversations across the areas. So a little bit like Nikki said, that we can either pick up and think about including or trying in our own programs. So we haven't got time to see if it's good practice or not, but we can make those judgments, but definitely shared examples across that.
Or a selection to pick out what might work for you. Absolutely, absolutely. Sharon, very quickly from you.
For me, it's around a critical friend, I think. Getting them to look at what we're doing, map out some of the challenges that we have, and really look at collaborative solutions.
Super. Fresh pair of eyes can often help. You are so immersed in it, absolutely. And last, before we hand back to James, Kirsty, from you, anything that you would like from the contract?
Yeah, apologies, my camera stopped working, but
no problem at all.
I think the one-to-one support with an advisor, and I think I just need to take this time to say a huge thank you to Julie Nelms, a shout out, who was our advisor from the HAF, who gave up 100% of her time for Wandsworth to help us put our program together. And only to echo what my other colleagues on the call have said around opportunities for collaboration with other local authorities, with Wandsworth being an inner city borough, with many of our children living in Wandsworth and going to school out of borough, or vice versa. It meant it was so difficult to capture some of those young people, their attendance, to give them the choice, and to support them access provision outside of the borough if that's what they wanted to do. So definitely more networking, more joint working, and having access to that one-to-one support.
Super. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to all of you for giving up your time this morning. It's been great to hear from you all, and I look forward to seeing you in a room somewhere else soon. Back to you, James.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you everybody for that really interesting half an hour discussion of those real experiences. Pleased to say that those requests at the end of that slot absolutely fit with how our strategy is constructed. So we will be sharing examples and ideas and tools for you. And looking at the Q&A, Andrea, there is a huge body of people saying that they would like to have access to your SEND template. So if you're going to be able to share that or able to share that with them, that would be fantastic. If so, do send it to us and we can send it on, but there's quite a few requests for that SEND template. As Joe has said, the cluster meetings are your local small cluster networking opportunities, and that email went out yesterday for those invites. And of course, we'll be doing more of the national webinars like these, and we literally take the baton from the Department for Education for the bite-sized sessions. The bite-sized sessions are still being delivered by the department through May, but from June onwards, that's when we take over. And we've already outlined that one-to-one support and critical friend input through the advisor team. So in terms of how we want to be able to support the sharing of tools and resources, we are very much hoping, well, there will be a Knowledge Hub site. There will be a local government association Knowledge Hub site. We've one of the curious things about our contract is that we've come in, we're the last people off the starting blocks. Literally, we are the last piece of that jigsaw. So we know that there is a HAF site on the LGA Knowledge Hub already run by LGA. So we've been talking to them about taking that over on their behalf. If not, we'll start a new one for the purposes of this project. So expect a Knowledge Hub site to be able to ask questions, open up discussions, and to share those tools and resources and examples coming in. And there was also a question on the Q&A about national comms and national communications. We're certainly talking to the department about what their national plans are, and as soon as we have any detail to share, we will share that with you. We know it's a busy space in terms of awareness and communications around it, and my interest was sparked at the HAF Alliance conference when I heard that Marcus Rashford was planning on doing some campaigning this term on it. You may or may not know that the department has developed a toolkit for local communications, and that toolkit is going to be made available in the next few days. I have heard this week, but I don't want to be the person that says it's available this week and it not happen. But the department will be releasing very shortly a local comms toolkit, and when that is released, we'll be making sure that the spotlight is shone on that for you. So thank you for your Q&As today. We of course will save those and respond to them and do whatever we need to do to respond to things that haven't been looked at today. Any follow-ups, and we'll work with Andrea to get that SEND template if that's possible. We'll share the poll results with you as well. As a reminder, do use the help desk. And in fact, if I share my screen now, I can show you the email address and the phone number eventually. There you go. So there's the email address and the telephone number for the help desk. Do use that to check and add to your mailing list so that we are communicating with the right people, to connect with your advisor, to ask questions and queries, and to make sure that you are taking advantage of those cluster meetings that we've scheduled for June. There should be a link on your Q&A any moment. It might have been put in the chat. If you could also put it in the Q&A, please. There is a link to the online evaluation, a very few questions around today's session. You will get an email later this afternoon, which will give you the resource that you need, the slides from today, a link to the recording of today's webinar if you want to share that with colleagues, and the evaluation again. So a very full session. I can't see that the evaluation link's up there yet. It's always best if it's up there on the Q&A before you leave, because it just takes 1 or 2 seconds for that to happen. But I would like to thank you for everybody for your time, and particularly thank you to Bradford, to Suffolk, to Wandsworth and to Herefordshire for your contributions today. Really valuable, and hopefully for everybody it's been a useful morning, and I can't tell you how delighted we are to have delivered our first interactive webinar of this contract, and we very much look forward to working with you in the next few months. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.